What's up guys, Ben here and bringing you another video today. We're going to go ahead and finish off our set of Major 4 predictions videos and preview videos. I'm going to go ahead and fill out a Major 4 bracket. Let's see how it goes. Let's see who's going to come out on top at the end of the weekend. All right, so first off, we have the winners round 1 matchups. I already kind of covered these sort of at length in my first couple of videos this week, so I'm going to kind of breeze through these and spend more time on the later parts of the bracket. We'll start with London and Toronto. This is the Ben Bans versus Trey matchup. I talked about it on sort of one of my previous videos. Right now, there's sort of like an imbalance of game modes in this matchup right now. London's like the better hardpoint team. Toronto's the better S&D team. London actually, for as good as they have been so far this major cycle, they've been horrible at control. They're 0-5. So like Toronto's best path is likely going to be the 2-3-5. I think all of that aside though, from my POV, I just think London's too much for them. I'm going to go ahead and have them go 3-1, and Toronto, once again, for the second major in the row, is going to have to do a loser's bracket run. Next up, we got Thieves versus Atlanta FaZe. So far this season, FaZe is 4-0. It's just so hard for me to see a path forward for Thieves right now in this series, unless FaZe are having kind of an off day or someone on Thieves is having a crazy day. The imbalance is not really in hardpoint this matchup. Thieves are 1-8 in S&D and control against FaZe so far this season. You're just not really going to be able to win series consistently against a team like that if you're not really clutching up in 2-5. I think overall, I'm going to give this a 3-1 to FaZe. I could definitely see this also being a 3-0. It's just so hard for me to pick Thieves in this matchup, especially when Kenny and the boys on Thieves haven't beaten FaZe at all since they've been a franchise in the CDL, and Kenny hasn't beaten FaZe at all since Black Ops 4. All right, well, now we get to the bottom side of winners here. We got the home team, the New York Subliners, going off against the Minnesota Rocker. New York coming in on fire form right now, really pushing, trying to get that champ spot. Super tight. They're going to have a crazy event, probably get top 3 or top 4 at this one, and they've got a pretty good path to do so. Okay results from Minnesota. They're playing like 500 ball. Their champ spot's not locked yet. They really had to grind out 2 game 5ers over the weekend in order to actually get into winners bracket. I think probably the biggest question mark kind of talking point in this matchup right now is whether or not Hydra is going to be able to play. He did test positive for COVID over the weekend, so we'll see how that develops throughout the week. I actually think this will be a close series and a real good banger for the audience. I do have New York taking it though in a map 5. Absolute classic. And finally, finishing up the winners bracket, we got Boston Breach versus Florida Mutineers on winners round 1 here. Interesting matchup. This is sort of the Reese Vivid Bowl, if we're going to have to give it some kind of phrase, some kind of naming here. Reese obviously was on Florida, moved to Boston before this major cycle. Florida brought in 2 Real after they couldn't get ASIM, and it's been kind of a mixed bag for Florida. They've also had Major Maniac coming in for Florida. I didn't mention that in my previous videos. Mike's kind of flown under the radar in that aspect. You know, for me, Boston's in really good form right now. It's hard for me to pick Florida in matchups like this, especially since Boston has won both times since the teams have faced off Atlanta this season. That was a major 1 and major 2. I think overall, I'm going to go ahead and give Boston a 3-1 victory, though. I won't be surprised if Florida somehow win this one. Boston's a young team. They're going to have ups and downs. It's really a 2-year project for these guys, but I think Boston will be able to clutch up and get a nice Northeastern face-off versus New York. All right, let's talk losers bracket here for a second. Got some interesting matchups now. On Friday, it's actually low-key, like if you look at, regardless of my picks or your picks or whatever, there's a good set of Friday matchups, honestly. We've had some kind of like snooze fest Fridays. I think this will be one of the better Fridays we've had in a long time in a major. We're gonna go ahead and start off with Toronto and LAG. This one's kind of an interesting one. Both teams still kind of fighting for their league qualification spot for champs. Overall right now, LAG's sitting kind of at the cut line, 5 points ahead of Minnesota and Florida in that last spot. Toronto's at 160. They should be safe, but obviously you never know. Form-wise, Toronto's maybe the better team coming into this. LAG's had some really kind of mixed results in Major 4. They did get a nice victory versus FaZe, but they've actually lost to Toronto earlier on in this major cycle. They lost to New York, Boston, and London. I think the biggest talking point for LAG for me has been the removal of ASIM and Gunless from the starting lineup. Neptune coming over from New York and Spark coming back in. This was after they had won Major 2 together as a team, that crazy run, and then they were just flat out awful for Pro-Am in Major 3. Honestly, kind of thinking about it, historically how those matchups worked out, I kind of really have to go with Toronto in this one. I just think that they are probably the better S&D team, and I think it's actually going to be a map 5 gruely. The thing for LAG though is even if they lose this matchup, they are 5 points ahead of the teams below them. There is an opportunity for them to still make it the champs if they get 0 points at this major. Next up, we got Thieves versus Paris, and guys, not going to spend too much time on this one. Paris has just been flat out awful this major. I think those guys kind of have 1 foot out the door. I'm going to go ahead and make it a 3-0. I think Thieves will make quick work of them and advance on to top 8. Finally, we're finishing out the losers bracket with 2 really interesting matchups down here with a lot of implications for champ seeding. We've got Minnesota versus Optic. Surprise losers bracket appearance for Optic Gaming here. It's been really up and down for them since Major 1, to be really candid. They had a pretty good showing at Pro-Am, but outside of that honeymoon with Prelude, it's been sort of a mixed bag for them. Minnesota as well, we just talked about it, been kind of up and down as well. Inder's actually probably been the best player on Optic low-key like the last couple of matches. So that's a good sign for them. I think weirdly enough for Optic, their struggles in control maybe won't be an issue here. It's just hard for me to look past them in a LAN situation. I cannot fathom, personally, kind of imagine a role where they get top 12 at this event. This just seems psychotic to me. But I do think Minnesota is going to push them pretty deep in this series. I'm actually going to go ahead and make this a 3-2. It'll be a grinder. I'm going to get a Shotzi masterclass in game 5. One final thought on this matchup as well. Like, this would put Minnesota in a really tough spot for champs. It would be crazy to me if they didn't make it a champs, but the standings are so tight. There's a really tough draw and really unlucky draw for Minnesota. They're really going to have to beat Optic, I think, to have a shot at making it to champs, but we'll see how all the scenarios break out throughout the weekend. Last up, we got Florida versus Seattle. Kind of a trap one, to be honest. It's hard for me to sort of count out Florida in these majors. I don't see them as like a real contender to win, but think about these results that they've had so far in majors this year. They got 4th at Major 2, 8th at Pro-Am, and top 6 at Major 3. Actually decent results if you think about it. Top 8's not too bad. It's obviously not putting you in the contender category. We are better than half the league. Seattle right now is not coming in on great form. They're like a massive question mark to me. I think if Mac plays a little bit better, the Seattle team can go on a little bit of a run at this event. But I also think this is going to be another 3-2 banger. I'm going to go ahead and actually kind of give Seattle the benefit of the doubt on this one, but I do not feel super confident about this pick, guys. Like, I definitely could see a role where Florida advances. And if that happens, Optic Gaming boys and Optic Gaming fans are going to be a little nervous because Florida's had their numbers so far this season. All right, guys, we're going to finish up with the last match on Friday. Losers round 2. There's a match for top 6, Toronto versus LA Thieves. These teams have faced off a couple of times this year, actually twice on LAN. Toronto has won both times recently on the I believe the final day, the first match on Championship Sunday, when Ultra advanced to the losers finals over Thieves. They've actually been pretty close kind of looking at these matchups. I kind of think that the advantage for Toronto once again in one of these matchups is sort of S&D. Thieves have been okay at search, but not the best. Toronto hasn't been particularly good at respawn though, which makes me a little nervous for them in this series. This is one of those ones where if I'm Thieves, I cannot let this one go to 5 because I just have like no faith in Thieves to clutch this up in this matchup. All right, guys, time for my prediction on this one. I like the Toronto guys, but I kind of really like Thieves' sort of performances on LAN recently. There's something about this team that makes me think they can get a nice top 6, maybe top 4 at this tournament. I'm going to go ahead and have them take 3-1. I honestly think this matchup can go either way, to be honest. It'd be a tough bounce for Toronto, to be honest, to go ahead and get top 8 this event, but I wouldn't stress too much if I'm them. They still have a lot to work on a respawn. That's the major thing, and I think this would be sort of a wake-up call for them. They've got to try and finally figure that out at the end of the season. All right, last match here in losers round 2. We got Optic versus Seattle. Absolute banger here. One of these teams is going to be so incredibly disappointed if they have to go ahead and finish top 8 this event. Like you can't imagine Seattle like coming off their last event win and getting top 8, going to champs. That's tough. And for Optic fans, it would be, I think, wholly unacceptable for their team to get top 8. And will be a lot of questions about the camp if they do lose this matchup. Seattle actually doesn't have a winning record. These teams have faced so far 3 times this season. Optic is actually 2-1 against them. That being said, they haven't played since the second major in which Optic actually got swept by Seattle at that event. Form wise, I like neither team is really coming in this matchup with like sort of good stuff. I think we're going to have to kind of really play it out and see how the previous matchups go through. I'm going to go ahead and give the Optic boys another real game 5 sweater. There's a lot of overlap with like Tuscan and Berlin here with both these teams. We can see a lot of those maps. I just think Optic's probably the better Tuscan team if Dashy shows up and plays well in LAN, which he usually does. But again, just both these are round 2 matchups, bro. I am not confident whatsoever in either of these picks. I'll be honest with you guys. It could really honestly go either way. All right, let's start with the winners round 2 matchup. First one's kind of interesting. London versus FaZe. These teams faced off recently. London actually beat FaZe a couple of weeks ago, so that's interesting. First time London's actually beaten FaZe at all in the CDL. I think personally though, I just feel like this FaZe team kind of has more about them, especially on LAN. They've been a lock for second so far at every event. Matchup wise, I just don't see FaZe losing back to back to this team. I'm gonna go ahead and say 3-1. Maps are going to be very close. London will play them tight, but I think FaZe will go ahead and advance to winners finals here. And I'm really actually excited. This next matchup on the winners side, New York versus Boston's like an absolute heater to me. Absolute, like if New York wins this matchup and they get top 3, like I think that's their chance spot, probably locked in. So a lot of emotion on the line for these guys. Historically this season, New York's kind of had the better hand in this matchup. They are actually 2-0, I believe, against Boston so far this season, but I believe all of those were with the old roster. They haven't played at all yet in stage 4, so not really a easy read out there. there in terms of personnel. I think this matchup could give New York some issues. Boston plays with a lot of speed in hardpoint. New York plays a lot of speed in hardpoint. So this could be some kind of crazy respawn maps. It may come down to really who's sort of the better S&D team in this matchup. New York's kind of turned the corner a little bit on that. They're playing like 500 ball, but earlier this season, they were like kind of really not particularly good in this game mode. Boston's also another team as well that's sort of a mixed bag in S&D. Berlin's been really good for them to start the year, but then they kind of faded off, and all the other maps have been kind of up and down. I'm going to give the home team a chance here. We'll say 3-2. This one could be an absolute classic of a series. It may come down to a round 11, game 5. Okay, we're looking at top 6 now. We're on to Saturday. Finishing off the rest of Saturday here. Let's do Boston and Thieves first. This is a tough one for me. I think based on form, pure form alone, I'd probably go with Boston on this one. If we just consider how they played the last couple of weeks, it's all we've seen at this point. I feel pretty good with Boston in this matchup. Thieves, though, like, have shown some ice on land, especially in Major 3. I think, to be honest, man, I'm going to have to give Boston this one. I'll say a 3-1. Not a lot of 3-0s here. It's hard for me to say that this is going to be just a blowout. I just think Boston is the better respawn team, and that's a big problem for Thieves. They've got to really go toe-to-toe with people in respawns because their S&D game's not that good. I could definitely see this going to 5 games potentially, but I just think Boston's got more about them right now. Really good top 4 showing from Boston and for Thieves. I wouldn't be too upset with top 6. That gets you into champs and gives you something to build on as you go into the final event of the season. And last up, we got the London Royal Ravens versus Optic Gaming. This is kind of an intriguing matchup. My concern is London's the better form team, but like this is one of those matchups where London's kind of they play a lot with their emotions on their sleeve with a lot of heart, and like when you do that against Optic, historically teams get in a lot of trouble. You start to overthink things, get a little bit too frantic. It just they get kind of taken a bit by the moment. Optic, obviously, like form wise, we talked about in their previous matchups so far in this tournament, like isn't the best, but if they're grinding out these 2 game 5 wins, I feel pretty good about like their progression so far in this tournament. I kind of want to coin flip this, man. I honestly fucking don't know. This is so hard to me, but you know what, Optic fans, you're gonna hate me for this one. I like your team. I'm going to go with London to close this out, to close out Saturday. A surprise 3-2 victory for London. They advanced to top 4, kind of cementing them in Boston as sort of the form teams. And for Optic, look, I don't think top 6 would be that bad. You'd be a little disappointed they didn't make it to Championship Sunday. But considering how bad they played the last couple of weeks, it gives you something to take in, going a chance where you can hopefully turn around and maybe compete for the championships. All right, we're on to Championship Sunday here. New York versus FaZe. Ooh. I might have a spicy one for this one. So far this season, when these 2 teams have played, FaZe had the better hand. But right now, FaZe like don't look particularly good in hardpoint. I think New York would kind of class them out in that game mode. FaZe is probably the better S&D team. Control FaZe is pretty good, but you know, listen, man, I believe in New York against his home crowd. I actually think that New York is going to take this into game 5. No BS. I love the FaZe guys. As you all know, MC is my son. But I think New York rides this. They get that dream winner's final berth, and FaZe will go down to losers once again and have to fight through losers to make it to the grand final. All right, we're going to go with the next match, Boston versus London. The 2 teams, the 2 informed teams so far at this major. These teams are dead even so far in their matchups this season. They're 1-1. They're tied in map count. I think Boston will be coming off both teams will be coming off probably big losers wins prior to this match. So like form, emotion, I think is all kind of even. This is as true of a coin flip of a series as you're going to get. I think on my end, in terms of like experience and maybe sort of the package around them, I kind of like Boston a little bit more in this matchup personally. This may be one of those ones, weirdly enough, where I think the coaching staff and sort of the mindset around the camp might make a difference as you sort of get to the championship Sunday. I'm going to go ahead and give Boston a 3-1 against London. I could see this kind of going to a 3-2. I just feel like Boston's got a really good chance. Surprise top 3 for Boston coming off that roster change, bringing Reese Vivid in. That being said, though, elimination finals versus FaZe. I think the FaZe is kind of automatic in these elimination finals. They pretty much just are shoo-in to make it to grand finals these days. We'll go ahead and we'll spot Boston 1 map. We'll say the control. FaZe 3-1. Boston, nice top 3 finish. You feel really good about your seeding going into champs, but coming up just short and making it to the grand finals. All right, so grand finals, New York versus FaZe. It's like a dream final if you're the New York team. A real kind of bar to prove about where you're at. Really good journey for these guys at this point. They'd have their champ spot locked in. They'd be feeling good. FaZe would have number 1 seed actually locked in for champs at this point. Personally, for me, when we get to these best of 9s, it's about depth of map pool. And I think in that, it kind of thought process and sort of mindset to me. I actually think that FaZe might have the upper hand in this one, purely on the fact that, like, while New York's getting better at S&D, their S&D map pool is very thin. The only real map that they're good at is Desert Siege, and FaZe were good at that for a while. Haven't been good recently, but I have a feeling they're going to figure it out. Controls, like New York's pretty even across the board. I've recently gotten better at the game mode. New York will have the advantage in hardpoint, but like I could see FaZe just getting a little Berlin and just kind of scoring up on the other maps, or maybe they've got something up their sleeves there. I'm going to go ahead. We're going to go this to 8 maps, but I think finally FaZe are going to go ahead and take this one, finally grab their event win of the season, and lock in some good momentum going into champs. Well, that's it, guys. If the bracket plays out this way, there's a lot of storylines to this one. London, once again, like at the end of the year, like having momentum like they did in the first year of CDL and being a top 4 team would be crazy. Not really that crazy if you consider the form they're in right now. A nice top 3 from Boston would be good. And a couple of surprise early exits. I mean, overall, like one Optic or Seattle is really going to be feeling really poor after this event getting top 8. And I think the Toronto Thieves camps also kind of in a similar boat. Roster mania implications there. We'll get to sort of in a video in a couple of weeks. Overall, really excited for this weekend. I'm going to be going ahead and we're going to be doing watch parties. I'm actually going to be staying potentially at Tommy's place, so we'll be doing watch parties together, and then we'll be pulling up to the venue on Sunday. So if you see us there, check us out. Well, if you guys liked the video, go ahead and leave a comment. Let me know what you liked or disliked. If you can hit the sub button as well, I'd really appreciate that. I'll go ahead and see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much.